Today, breaking news: the war in Eastern Europe is entering a phase that many analysts feared but few openly discussed for months. All eyes are now on Belarus, a country that until recently lived in the background of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. What was once seen as a supporting actor is now being watched as a potential driver of the next major shift in the war. Belarus sits at a geographic crossroads that makes every move it takes matter. It borders Ukraine to the south, Russia to the east, and NATO territory to the west and north. This position alone turns Belarus into a strategic pressure point where even small decisions can produce large consequences. Geography has always shaped wars, and in this conflict it is shaping fears. Since the early days of the invasion of Ukraine, Belarus has played a quiet but critical role. Russian forces used Belarusian territory for troop movements, missile launches, and logistical support. At that time, many believed Belarus was already involved, just without its own troops openly fighting. That assumption is now being tested. What has changed is not only military activity but political signaling. Statements from Minsk, joint exercises with Russian forces, and increased military readiness have sent signals that Belarus may be preparing for a deeper role. Each announcement is carefully worded, yet the direction feels increasingly clear to observers. The Belarusian leadership has long walked a narrow line. On one side is Russia, its closest ally and economic lifeline. On the other side is the fear of internal unrest and international isolation. Every step toward deeper involvement risks consequences at home and abroad. Belarus has a history of balancing dependence and caution. Its economy relies heavily on Russia, from energy supplies to trade routes. Its military doctrine has been shaped around cooperation with Moscow. Yet full-scale war involvement would expose Belarus to sanctions, retaliation, and possible instability. The Ukrainian perspective is shaped by geography and memory. Ukraine remembers the opening days of the war when Russian troops advanced toward Kiev from the north, crossing through Belarus. That threat has never fully disappeared. Ukrainian defenses in the north remain alert, knowing that a renewed push could force Ukraine to stretch its forces even thinner. For Ukraine, the concern is not just invasion but pressure. Even the possibility of Belarus joining actively forces Kiev to keep troops and equipment stationed away from the eastern and southern fronts. This diversion of resources is itself a strategic advantage for Russia. Russia's interest in Belarus is both practical and symbolic. Practically, Belarus provides depth, staging areas, and alternative routes. Symbolically, Belarus joining more openly would signal unity and resolve, showing that Russia is not isolated in the region. Russian military planners understand that opening or threatening a northern front complicates Ukraine's planning. It creates uncertainty, and uncertainty in war can be as powerful as firepower. Belarus offers Russia that lever without requiring immediate large-scale offensives. NATO watches Belarus with equal intensity. Any significant escalation involving Belarus would bring military activity closer to NATO borders. Countries like Poland and Lithuania are particularly sensitive, increasing surveillance and readiness in response to developments across their borders. For NATO, the issue is not just Ukraine but stability. A more active Belarus could trigger miscalculations, accidents, or provocations that draw NATO closer to direct confrontation. This is a scenario alliance leaders are determined to avoid, yet must prepare for. Inside Belarus, the situation is complex. Public opinion is not uniform, and memories of past protests remain fresh. Large segments of the population are wary of war, fearing economic hardship and loss of life. The leadership must consider whether the country can absorb the shock of deeper involvement. Military readiness within Belarus has increased, but questions remain about morale and capacity. While Belarusian forces are trained and equipped, they lack recent combat experience on the scale seen in Ukraine. Entering the conflict would be a major test. Another factor is the use of Belarusian territory for advanced weapons. Reports of missile systems, air defenses, and even nuclear-related infrastructure have raised alarm. Whether these deployments are permanent or symbolic, they increase the stakes. The presence of such weapons changes calculations on all sides. Ukraine must consider new threat vectors, NATO must reassess deterrence, Russia gains leverage, but also increases risk, Belarus becomes a focal point of strategic tension rather than a buffer. Diplomatically, Belarus faces narrowing options. Western sanctions have already taken a toll. Further involvement could deepen isolation. At the same time, distancing itself from Russia would threaten economic stability and political survival. This trap limits flexibility. The war's next chapter is defined by pressure rather than sudden moves. Belarus may not launch a dramatic invasion tomorrow. Instead, gradual steps, exercises, deployments, and statements can slowly shift reality on the ground. This slow burn is harder to counter. Information warfare plays a role as well. Signals sent through media, speeches, and military drills are meant to influence perceptions. Each side reads into Belarusian actions, sometimes amplifying fears beyond immediate realities. For Ukraine, vigilance is essential. Defensive lines, intelligence gathering, and diplomatic engagement with allies continue. Kiev knows that preparedness can deter action, but also that complacency invites surprise. For Russia, Belarus represents both opportunity and risk. Pushing too hard could destabilize an ally, holding back could waste strategic advantage. This balance defines Moscow's approach. For Belarus, the future is uncertain. Becoming more involved could lock the country into a conflict with no clear exit. Staying on the margins may become increasingly difficult as pressures mount from all directions. The civilian impact must not be overlooked.